Hey, hello everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Johnny K. Dixon and this is Pop Topics, a series in which we talk about some of the hottest names in pop music. So in today's video, I wanted to take some time to start a discussion about Justin Bieber's most recent album. It's called Changes. It was released just a few months ago, and it was a unanimous decision that this was not his best album. Some people even believe that this was Justin's worst album. My opinion is that it definitely was not his best album. It was an acquired taste for me, so it took some time to grow on me, but it is now an album that I enjoy listening to on a daily basis. So with today's video, I wanted to take some time to not necessarily talk about what I liked or didn't like from this album, but I wanted to take some time to talk about what I would want from Justin Bieber's next album. So I have a list that I put together here, and I would definitely recommend that you do the same, just so that we can get more of a conversation going about this topic. So if I'm going through this list and you feel like there's anything I missed, or anything that you are thinking separately from what you would want out of his next album, definitely feel free to drop that in the comment section below, so once again we can get more of a conversation about music going. So without further delay, we're gonna go ahead and jump into this video. So the first thing that I want out of his next album is experimentation. With this album, Justin Bieber really played it safe. And to a certain extent, I can see why he played it safe. It's been a long time since he's released an album, and he even talked a lot about how he felt very nervous going into the album process. He didn't know how people would respond to him now, especially after the long history that he's had. So with that being said, I can understand Justin Bieber going on a safer route. And with him going that safer route, the album ended up having one consistent sound. However, with his next album, I still would like to see him experiment a lot more. He did a really good job in his past work experimenting with his music. So just a quick example, a song like Backpack featuring Lil Wayne. That song was on his Journals album, and it was a really interesting track, and it was something that I wouldn't expect to hear from Justin Bieber. He also has tracks where even if he wasn't experimenting much, he was being very innovative. So if we're thinking, a song like Sorry and a song like What Do You Mean, that helped to bring more of that tropical house sound to the mainstream. So that experimentation and innovation is what sets a lot of artists apart from their competition. So when it comes to this topic of experimentation, it's definitely something that Justin knows how to do. And I think that with this album being such a safe album, it led to a bit of a letdown. So even if it's something where the experiment comes in a weirder song, or a song that takes some more time to digest or to appreciate, I still think it would be really nice for him to take more risk with his next album, or to just experiment a little bit more, experimenting lyrically, so describing things in a way that we haven't heard him describe things before. Maybe subject-wise, going for something that we haven't heard before either. So with this Changes album, pretty much his marriage with Hailey Baldwin was the topic for the majority of the songs. So maybe in his next album, a simple experiment will be experimenting with different subjects, and either different things that have gone on in his life, or just different things that would maybe interest him to go ahead and make a song about. The next thing that I'm wanting out of his next album is excitement. So when I say excitement, I don't necessarily mean to attack the vibe of the album. So it was a very chill vibe for the album, and that was something that at first I didn't enjoy. But as I was listening more to the album, I liked that a lot more. When I'm talking about excitement, I mean that feeling where after you listen to the song and you're excited to hear what's going to come next. That is something that unfortunately was lacking with this album. So if I'm thinking of a direct example, listening to Children from his Purpose album, I didn't expect to hear that song. So after that song was done, I was really excited to hear what was going to come next out of Justin Bieber. With that being said, listening to his Changes album, because everything was so homogenous, because everything was on the same note and on a similar sound, you weren't really excited for what was going to come next because, in a way, we already knew what was going to come next. So with that being said, there's that general sense of excitement is what I want out of his next album. So I want to listen to a song and I want to be genuinely interested and intrigued about what is going to come next for his album. The next thing that I would want is I would want more emotion when it comes to his next album. So when I'm saying I want more emotion, I don't necessarily mean more emotion on his part. I mean more emotion on the listener's part. So when it comes to this album, a lot of it was about his marriage with Haley. And in listening to the album, you had moments where you weren't really happy for the marriage. You were just kind of going with the vibe of the song. And so I want to hear his music and I want to have some type of emotion that was meant to be conveyed from the song. And like I've said already a few times in this video, I think Justin does a really good job as an artist and he knows what he's doing. So when you're listening to a song like Love Yourself, and at the end of the song you're rooting for him, you're knowing what he's wanting, and you're getting some type of emotion of either being on his side or not being on his side. I think that being a superstar of his caliber, mainly going for an album that just establishes a vibe, is a bit below the level of what he can do. Once again, I really understand where he was coming from with why he decided to go the route that he did with the album. He was going through a lot in his personal life, and he had a lot of anxiety and nervousness when it came to working on this album. So I understand why changes is how it is. I think that for this point in time, it is very appropriate because it does show who Justin Bieber is. But hopefully as Justin gets out of that anxiety, he's willing to make more impactful songs with his next record that gives off or takes more emotion out of the listener. The next thing I want out of his album, and he did a really good job with this album as well, is staying true to himself. And that's been one of the things that has made Justin Bieber very unpopular when it came to this album. When he released, or when he started the rollout for this album, we saw a bit of a personality shift in Justin Bieber where he's not necessarily this smooth kid or this bad kid that we used to know. He's a bit of a cheeseball and he's really corny and he can say really cringe-worthy things in his songs. So, you know, if we're looking at the entire lyrics of Yummy, where it's super cringe-worthy. However, the more that you study Justin Bieber in this era, the more you learn that he's just kind of come to terms with this kind of, you know, quirky part of himself that is just very, once again, it can be very cringeworthy for me, but I think that the people in his life that have learned to accept Justin for who he is, they don't necessarily feel that cringe anymore because it's just who he is. So even using Yummy as the lead single, looking back at it was a good way to show us kind of who he is. But even with that being said, you know, even the way that, you know, he dresses now with, you know, the super baggy clothing and the weird mustache and everything, like it's kind of weird at first sight to take in, but as you just learn to just accept people for who they are and accept Justin for who he is, you learn to appreciate that and appreciate what he brings to the table. Another cringeworthy lyric for me is in Intentions, which is one of my favorite songs from the album, is when he says, "Shout out to your mom and dad for making you." Not a fun lyric, not a good lyric. I still cringe every time I hear that lyric. Still one of my least favorite lyrics of his entire career. But once again, staying true to himself, I think that even as he continues to grow and develop and mature, because you can definitely see that he is still in a state of no pun intended, of changing. As he continues to change, I think that him staying true will make an impactful record if he brings that true sense of himself to his next record. The next thing I want out of his next album, which once again he did a good job of this on Changes, is vocal variety. or in all honesty, just good vocal performance. We all know that Justin Bieber is a good singer, but we do have many instances in singers' careers in which they undersell themselves on how well they can sing. And this is definitely something that was not missing out of Changes. So you can listen to this album looking for a singer, and you will find a singer in this album. So that was a really positive thing about this work, is that that core of Justin Bieber is still there. So when I'm thinking of, hearing songs like Trust, where he shows a lot of good vocal performance, you hear that same vocal effort on this album. So that is just a full-on positive. I just hope that he continues to bring that to his next album, and that is a bit of Justin Bieber's trademark. That is one of the things that we know Justin Bieber for. So I'm sure that he'll bring it to his next album, and that is something that I look forward to. The next thing that I want out of his album is more transparency. So with this album rollout, Justin released a docuseries titled Seasons, in which you got to learn a little bit more about what Justin's been through. You get to learn a lot more about where Justin is today, and you also get to learn a bit more about his hopes and his dreams for the future of where he wants to go. You get a lot of details of his psyche, of how his brain is working now. You get a lot of detail of the mental, of the health issues that he is dealing with. And that docuseries definitely helps to humanize Justin Bieber a lot more, especially for a lot of the audience that still has a bad taste in their mouths for Justin Bieber. With that being said, things like his docuseries and things like, his interviews for the album, they do a really good job of adding depth to the album, but they're not actually a part of the album. So what we would want from his next album is for the content to stand on its own. So being more transparent, to sing about the challenges and the issues that are going on in your life. I think that the place that Justin Bieber is in, and he even mentions in an interview that he felt like he could have gone deeper with the album. I will say that in Justin's defense, I don't think that he was at a place where he was ready to go that deep and that personal. And even in some of his interviews, he mentioned that he has trust issues. So that's definitely one thing that I can see why he was not as transparent, but only opening the lens to one part of your life and then everything else opening so many other ways for us to view you doesn't give much justice to the album. It gives justice to your character, but it doesn't do much to show us who you are through just the music alone. So just through the music, I don't get to know much about Justin Bieber, but watching everything else, I learn a lot about him, and that's one thing that I wish was more on the record. So one of the things that we never knew is that Justin Bieber is a devoted Christian. So he was doing a lot of drugs, getting into a lot of trouble, and then he decided to go more of the religious route in his life, and that really helped to set him in a different direction. Now, am I saying that he should have written a gospel song? No, but I'm saying that just some type of music to really showcase more of the struggles that's going on in his life and more of what got him to a better place. I think that would have added a lot more life to the album, and it would have made the story of him finding true love in the end, it would have made that story make a lot more sense. So plain and simple, with his next album, I just want him to be a lot more transparent about what is really going on in his life. He has a really devoted fan base and people that will understand and that will support him if he's being more transparent. The next thing that I want out of his next album is more healing. And so we live in the social media age where a lot of us try to come off as perfect. A lot of us try to come off as though we have everything solved already, and that's just not the case. Especially for a lot of us that are in our 20s, and someone like Justin Bieber, who became famous at a very young age, a lot of us still haven't figured it out. So figured out how to navigate through life, figured out really what happiness is and what's going to get us there. And so I think that not just even Justin Bieber, but a lot of us in my generation being more honest about where we are can lead us to taking more steps to finding more healing. And so with Justin Bieber's life, he is in no terms trying to make it seem as though he is in a perfect place, because he's very transparent in his interviews, and you can see that Justin Bieber still has more healing to go. You can tell that there's still something broken about him, and you can tell that there is still some trauma that he needs to uncover. So as we go throughout our lives, and as we heal, and as we try to become happier people, and as we try to learn how to love ourselves more, that ends up reflecting in everything else. So when we really learn how to love ourselves, and we really learn how to make ourselves happy, that's going to see a difference in our demeanor, in the energy that we give off, in the way that we interact with people, in the people that we choose to interact with. And I think that with Justin Bieber, that healing is going to show in the music that he chooses to make. So once again, we are at a place where a lot of us are still dealing with a lot of the traumas that we have been dealt with while growing up. And we are still very young, and we still need a lot of time. And I think that to say, the term fully healed is something that none of us really know. But just taking another step to get there, I think is going to do wonders for the music that he puts out, to have that comfort to know that you can be transparent, that you can talk about your journey, and that even at the end of the journey, you can still say there's a long way to go. And no matter how old you get, we are still going to be okay with that, because a lot of us are still feeling that inside ourselves. And even someone on as big a scale as Justin Bieber saying something like, I still haven't figured it out, even with all this money, and even finding true love and everything, I still haven't figured it out. That will be amazing for us as a fandom to hear and to listen to. The last thing that I want out of this album is just acceptance. So when this album released, there was a bit of going back to this term of cringeworthy. That cringeworthy kind of album rollout that was happening, where he was really trying to push Yummy onto the public, and I would understand that if we were at a place in which, well, actually, no, I would never understand it. But I would understand a little bit more if Yummy was more of a hit that we are not understanding. Yummy is a very basic song, and the album itself is in turn a really basic album. So the main thing that I want out of Justin Bieber, the final thing, and in my opinion the most important thing that I would want from his next album, is a sense of acceptance. So we all know that there is something called a prime. So when you think of someone's prime, you think about when someone has reached the height of their career, the height of their life, the height of their youth, where that is the top and they are never going to conquer that top. Personally, I like to think that that isn't a fully true notion about life. So when we're talking about something like a prime, I like to think that people have many different primes in their lives. So of course, a lot of us experience primes in our 20s. Some people experience primes in their 30s when they feel like they have learned a lot more, when they feel like they are more financially and emotionally stable. Some people feel like they hit a new prime when they hit their 40s and they have a lot of life figured out. So with that being said, do I think that Justin Bieber has hit his prime and that there's no getting back to that? I do not think that is the case. Especially with someone like me being, a huge Madonna fan, a huge Cher fan, where in their careers they have had many ups and downs, and they have had many moments that people would say, oh, this is the prime of her career. She's not going to make anything better than Like a Prayer. She's not going to make anything better than Ray of Light. She's not going to make anything better than Confessions on a Dance Floor. So there is a possibility to have many different primes in your life, but my personal opinion is that that comes naturally. And it's not something that we force. I do think that when we get to a point where Justin Bieber has his next breakout album, it will be something that we will take in. However, it may not be something that is not taken in as much as your previous albums, because of the fact that after a hiatus, Changes was not a publicly accepted album. And I think that when Justin Bieber gets to a point of accepting that and accepting the fact that you may, top the charts again. You may top the charts again, you may not top the charts again, no matter how hard you work, and that is fine. Just make the music for the joy of making music, and I am sure that your fandom will appreciate that level of acceptance. It's not healthy to chase fame, especially with the fact that fame has caused him so much trauma and so much pain in his life. I wouldn't want him chasing after that. So I would want him to make his next album and just accept that it may be a huge success. So people may love this album and people may forget about how they didn't like Changes. Or you may release another album and people may not want to listen because of how deeply they didn't like Changes. I think that when it comes to this topic of success is really something that comes from inside. So if you make this album and if you feel like you put your best effort into it, that is success enough, and he's already put the hard work in that he can make an album, feel successful about it, and there is a huge enough fan base that will be there to support that album that you made in love. So with that being said, we have reached the end of my list. When it comes to the general overview or my general opinion of this album, I do have a lot of appreciation for this album. This album is something that I would call an acquired taste. So it was something that at the first listen I didn't like it and I didn't think that I would give it another listen, but as I changed the environments of how I listened to the album, I came to appreciate the album a lot more. I do think that it is an album that establishes more of a chill vibe, and after a long hiatus, people expect Justin Bieber to come out with a super huge song, and I like that Justin Bieber went against that by going more for the calmer, more sustained R&B route. So with that being said, this is just my personal list. Justin Bieber may want to make another album that sounds exactly like Changes, and it is his life. He's in control of it, and that is completely fine. And it's something where I know that his fan base will support him no matter what direction he decides to go to musically. Once again, if you feel like there are some things that I missed out with this video, so anything that you would want to add on a list, go ahead and drop that in the comment section below. Any other musical topics that you want me to cover, definitely give me a heads up. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will talk music with you later.